Hi, my name is Chaya Lerner. I'm a licensed clinical social worker for the state of Florida, and I'd like to show you a way for you to turn those OIs, those challenges, life challenges, into something called positivity or positive psychology. The whole concept of positive psychology is to increase your life satisfaction, not necessarily to make you happy, but to increase and appreciate your life as it is. And I'd like to take this moment to dedicate this video to a very dear friend who passed away recently. His name is Perry K. Levin, and he taught me in the way he acted in the world how to be positive in this world despite challenges. So the whole concept of positive psychology can be traced back to humanistic and cognitive psychology, and which devoted itself to challenging thought patterns to obtain happiness and fulfillment. And so we might remember these psychologists, Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow and Viktor Frankl and Aaron Beck. Those are the pioneers of this cognitive behavioral therapy types psychology that increases your life satisfaction. So Dr. Martin Seligman is a clinical psychology researcher at the University of Pennsylvania. And in 1967, he coined the term learned helplessness. So what is learned helplessness? Learned helplessness, back then in 1967, they did use animals as research. We have since evolved, or at least we hope so. And so what he would do is he would cage animals and tie them up. And I know it's heartbreaking to hear what people are doing, what people did with animals. And what would happen is that these dogs learned how to be helpless. And so he theorized that people do that too. So if you take someone who is a woman, typically, who is in a domestic violence situation, they have learned through behavioral modalities of their husbands or domestic partners to be helpless. And this is one of the reasons why domestic violence survivors stay in relationships, because they don't know how to get out of that situation. And it often leads to frustration, anger, resentment, not knowing how to express those emotions. One turns to depression. The thing is that he found out that not everyone, even in those awful situations, was able to, they couldn't completely generalize learned helplessness. And what he found was there are people who inherently were optimistic, that despite their life circumstances, they were still able to enjoy their lives. One of the things that he tried to research was something called learned optimism. So if we can learn to be helpless, is there a way for us as humans to learn to be optimistic? In 1998, he was elected to run the American Psychological Association. And one of the things that happened, he tells the story of his young daughter who was out with him gardening, and she turned to him and said, "Papa, why are you so grumpy?" And he realized that he didn't want to be that way around his daughter. So he made a conscious effort to be positive, to be grateful for what he had. One of the pioneers of this process was Abraham Maslow. And if you were in Psych 101 in college, you may have learned about the hierarchy of needs. So it's a pyramid, and at the very bottom of this pyramid are the biological and psychological needs that we have as humans. And that is things like having food, water, clothing, Those are basic needs that we have. The second level would be safety, and that is indicating that we have a place to live. We have physical safety, and so we need to have shelter. We need to know that we will have space so that if it rains or snows or something, that we'll be safe. The third level is belonging and love. And belonging and love is usually where most people kind of fall into. And those are needs to feel like we're validated as humans, that we have connections with another human being and animals as well. We need to be connected to another being. We produce oxytocin, which is a hormone that allows us to love and to be empathetic with another human being. I often think that this is based on our very beginning roots, when we had to bind together, come together in order to survive, because there were other wild animals, other people who were out to kill us. Well, now that's not necessarily the case, but we do have stresses in our lives that make us want to have that need to connect with another human being. The next level is esteem. We want to know that we are respected and that we respect other people. But the most important thing is self-esteem. That means, how do we view ourselves in the context of our lives? And hopefully we can get that done by increasing our self-worth. But we also have to understand that we have to be worthy of other people. We have to treat other people with esteem, with other respect. The ultimate goal, as far as Abraham Maslow was concerned, at the very top of that pyramid, is self-actualization. And this is the ability that with everything, biological and physiological needs met, safety, belonging and love, esteem, that we are at a higher level, a higher spiritual level. And at some point in one of the videos, we'll talk about that self-actualization need that we have. So often, you know, when you have all these needs met, it's not necessarily that all those needs are going to be met at the same time. There are often, at least now, on November 3rd, 2019, there are fires raging in California, and people are losing their homes. They're losing all their basic needs, their clothing, their shelter, their ability to get food. And without those basic needs, then we are lost, and we need to take care of ourselves in those respects. Safety might be an issue. If, for example, you have been, you're going along and you have a car accident, or you're attacked in some way, then your issues of safety will be around. And of course, you'll be concerned about your safety. And if a relationship has ended, then you're going to be lonely. Many of the people I work with in my practice are just lonely, and they want a connection with another human being. And of course, it's unfortunate that in the West, we don't esteem ourselves. We don't have self-worth. We put ourselves down. And these negative thoughts only increase our anxiety and our depression, our sadness. So all of these things work together to produce a positive life. And it's kind of an easy way of mapping where we are in our human evolution, how we're doing and with life, is to look at this pyramid and see where we are on that pyramid on any given day, moment, time. So Buddhists believe that attachment leads to suffering and people have the choice in suffering. So you can determine if, yes, you are in emotional or physical pain, but suffering for the Buddhists is suffering is an option. Following the middle path relieves suffering. Now, what is the middle path? The middle path determines, are you going to, you choose your attitude about the certain situation that you're in. Jews believe happiness is a mission in life. For Jews, there's an idea that every moment is a recreation, that creation is done at an every moment basis, and we have the ability to be grateful for every moment that we have. Christians believe happiness comes in caring for others through love, forgiveness, and humility. We know that Jesus came down for Christians to believe that they are relieved of their suffering. And of course, with Muslims and Sufis, we believe that there's a belief that we need love, that religion is love, that love and compassion and care and mercy, those are the elements that bring us life satisfaction. Martin Seligman said, habits of thinking need not be forever. One of the significant findings in psychology in the last 20 years is that individuals can choose the way they think. So that this is, again, much in the way of the mindfulness practice, that we can choose how we think. And with thinking, with that, then it affects our emotion and our bodies, our physical being, and also how we act around other people. Two things that happen when you feel happier in life. You catch on to the fact that you have a choice to how you see the world, and you let go of what does not work. So Martin Seligman determined that there are some things called PERMA, P-E-R-M-A. And so these are the 5 elements to human flourishing. The P stands for positive emotions. Now, what are they? Well, that could be gratitude. There could be joy. There could be laughter. Any number of those positive emotions. Engagement. How do you engage with the world? Do you engage in a positive way? Do you engage in a negative way? Relationships are exceptionally important. How you relate to your family, how do you relate to your coworkers, how do you relate to your colleagues, your classmates if you're in college, in school. Relationships can also, we don't mean that the significance of, let's not belittle the relationships of pets. Pets are extremely important. They bring on that connection that we often need. And certainly I would think that people who are lonely could benefit from a pet in some way. Meaning, what gives you meaning in your life? We'll talk a little bit about Viktor Frankl, who was a psychiatrist in Nazi Germany and was in Auschwitz, and he determined that people had to have a meaning in life in order to keep living. So you need purpose, you need meaning. Accomplishment. We're so bent on not believing in ourselves. If we could look at the accomplishments that we've made, whether that's accomplishment is being able to get out of bed in the morning, to be able to smile, to be able to put one foot in front of the other, that is an accomplishment. Now, it would be nice if we got the Nobel Peace Prize or we got the Pulitzer, That's wonderful. But what's important and what's the miracle of every day is being able to get out of bed and to thank God, thank the universe for what we do have. So the myths of psychology, positive psychology, is that money buys happiness. Not necessarily. We know that there are very rich men, very rich people who are very miserable. That happiness comes from outside of yourself. That's not necessarily the case. What is outside of you can be taken away from you. So if you put your happiness in with your job, with your home, with your possessions, all of that can be taken away in a moment's notice. Thinking positive thoughts and smiling your way through a health challenge, not necessarily the case. It helps if you smile. It helps to try to find some meaning, some positivity in the challenges that you're having, but it's not going to take away your health problem. You may have cancer, but if you can look at all the people helping you through that cancer and through that, and being appreciative of the medication that you're getting, and understanding what's going on internally with you, then you might relieve some of the symptoms and be able to live a good life, however you determine that word, good, until the end of your life. Positive thinking caused the economic collapse of America. This is absurd. Positive thinking did nothing to do with the economic collapse of America. Concentrating on positive affirmations only. No, you have to do the work. Positive affirmations are good, but you have to do what's necessary every single day in order to have that increased life satisfaction. And the belief that happiness is inauthentic. Happiness is something that's internally, that we are given as a divine gift to be happy. This is what God wants us. So I wanted just to touch back a little bit about learned helplessness and understand that, again, I'm sorry that this has to deal with animals, but unfortunately this was a time when animals were used for research purposes. And like everything, even though animals are hurt in this situation, we can learn from them. So in learned helplessness experiment, an animal is repeatedly hurt by adverse stimulus which it cannot escape from. Eventually, the animal stops trying to avoid the pain and behave as if it utterly helpless to change the situation. Finally, when opportunities to escape are presented, this learned helplessness prevents any action. The only coping mechanism the animal uses is to be stoic and put up with the discomfort, not expending energy, getting worked up about the adverse stimulus. So we go back to the domestic violence survivor who is constantly berated by her partner or his partner, and they learn that the best thing to do is not to expend that energy, is to keep going. One of the things that I find in my practice, and I keep joking with my clients, is the elimination of shoulds, SHOULDS. We carry around many beliefs about what should or should not be. Some shoulds are about what happened to us. We believe I should be successful. My spouse should know what I want without my saying so. Those shoulds put unrealistic pressure on us to do things that we don't necessarily have to do. Shoulds are not written in stone. I often joke that there are 10 things that we should do that are in the 10 Commandments in the Bible, but we don't do them anyway, or most of us don't. So we know that that is unrealistic. If we stop putting ourselves in the should moment, then we give ourselves that freedom to be able to do what we need to do. So negativity, anger deters aggressors. If we are angry, every emotion that I'm about to talk about, there is a purpose to that emotion. We try to avoid that. Anger deters aggressors. It also enables us to right wrongs. We think of African Americans in the 60s who fought for their civil rights. We think about the gays and lesbians during Stonewall in 1969 that refused to be beaten up and arrested for who they were. So that anger is righteous anger that allows us to move forward into a new reality. Fear. Fear says to us, a danger is near us. What can we do about that? We want to protect ourselves. We want to survive. Our goal is to survive. If we have fear, then that allows us to move in a direction of safety. Disgust is a type of aversion that involves withdrawing from a person or object with strong expressions of revulsion, whether real or pretended. So we want to protect ourselves from disease. So if someone is exuding some, excuse the expression, some bodily fluid that may be allowing for us to get close and we contract that disease, then it goes back to that we cannot survive. Sadness warns us to be cautious and saves energy. And grief reminds us of the people we loved and lost. So sadness reminds us of the past. And that is, in a sense, a good thing because memory is a good thing. But when we get to that point where we no longer have a balance, so each of these emotions, there's a balance, a positive imbalance to that. And it allows for us to keep with an equanimity, a certain balance that we need in this life to move to do what we need to do, what we are intended to do. Negativity is important, and we can't flourish without it. It's one of the most significant things in life that we need those negative emotions. We must grieve those people we've lost, those situations that we've lost. We are wounded from whether it's an early age or somewhere in the middle, or as an older person, we get wounded because we have the ability to love each other. And because we love each other, sometimes those people leave us. To experience 100% of positivity denies the humanness of life. We must go through loss. It's part of the complexity and the beauty of life. Research tells us that focusing on the negative is natural. That is part of our survival mechanisms. It allows for us to learn. It allows for us to grow as a person. And what are we going to do to prepare ourselves for the next event? To reframe the negative energy around them. Anger is an emotion. It's different from aggression. So that's sometimes what we get confused by. We say, well, we're afraid to be angry because anger will cause us to do something that is harmful. It's not the anger that's the problem. It's what we do with that anger. You know, I've heard it say that men stereotypically, when they're angry, they go down to the nearest bar, they get drunk, someone gets angry with them and they punch them, or they throw a chair. For women, we internalize that anger, and that becomes sadness. Anger comes under predictable circumstances. Someone cuts you off in traffic, you get angry. When we get concerned about something that may be unjust, we get angry. We have to confront justice. We have to, they say, justice, justice shall you pursue. Well, that's not necessarily that justice will happen. It's just that we pursue justice. That's the ideal. Sadness is a negative interpretation of the past. When depression is present, it is easier to have sad memories than happy ones. When someone dies, we miss them, and that causes us profound sadness. Aaron Beck is the father of cognitive therapy, found that allowing people to vent and focus on the past only served to worsen the situation. But I don't necessarily agree with that. I think we need to address what we've been angry with and allow it as a toxin to be relieved, and then we can get on to the healing part. He found it more beneficial to change thought patterns about the present and the future. So once we are able to get rid of the toxins, that sadness that holds in, allow it in the anger to release, that jealousy, all of those things to release itself, then we can start the healing process. And through that is the changes in thought patterns. So I'll end this with a concept called the set point principle, an adaptation principle. Stephen Hawking, the scientist who had Lou Gehrig's disease and unfortunately died a couple of years ago, a brilliant mind, said, "My expectations were reduced to zero when I was 21. Everything since then has been a bonus." To quickly return to a negative, stable level of happiness despite major positive or negative events or life changes, our level of happiness is 50% determined by genetics, 10% determined by outside circumstances, and 40% determined by intentional activities. So basically what that means is to explain what set point principle is. So you have two people. One, let's say person A is always happy. That person is always smiling, always giving a good word, a positive word to people, and she's just always happy. She gets on a motorcycle and she's 19 years old. She's about to be valedictorian, about to get into her favorite college. Everything is going well. But that night she gets on a motorcycle and a driver cuts her off and she has a terrible accident. And she loses the use of her legs. She's paralyzed. She's laying in the hospital, and of course she's sad and depressed, and things are not going well for her. The thing is that in a few months, she's going to go back to having that positive mindset, because it's like this level, this is where she was, and she may be down here, but she's going to go back, trying to get back to here, and this is where she's always going to be. You go down a little bit, but she's going to go back up. Another person, she's always depressed, always thinking about things in a pessimistic way. And she wins the lottery, millions of dollars in lotto. And she's going to be very happy. She's going to go out and pay all of her bills, and she's going to go travel around the world. But what happens then is she's always been at this bottom level. She's going to go back up here, and then she's going to drop down to this level. It's hard to get. So she's always going to go back to here. And so that's what we do. If we are inherently positive people, we're going to go back to our positivity levels. If we're negative people, we're going to go back to our negative levels. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. What could be is that we can learn to increase our set point principle, our baseline, so that we are happy, we've had our increased life satisfaction. So next week I will share with you some more hints on how to increase your life satisfaction, increase your positivity, and I look forward to seeing you again. You can reach me at crlerner09@gmail.com. I welcome all comments. Have a nice day.